We have with us today Lynne Radiches from the Ethics Commission. She is responsible for designing and developing all of the educational programs and offering advisory opinions, and does trainings online and does trainings like she's doing today. We found the Ethics Commission to be very responsive to requests. Sometimes it might just be your town council and school committee together that ask for a presentation, and they've been very effective doing it on a location by location basis. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynne, and she'll take you through the code and be available to answer questions. And hopefully nobody here is in conflict right now, so we won't have any of those questions about, can I hire my brother-in-law to be the superintendent?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lynne Radiches, and to use a common phrase, I am from the government and I am here to help you. I want to thank Tim Duffy for the invitation to be here today. If were I not here in front of you, I would be pedaling a stationary bike for 45 minutes, so thank you very much. I was here a couple of weeks ago to address the League of Cities and Towns, and I know at least one or two people were here at that time, so I apologize in advance because it's the same show pretty much, okay? And I will present to people year after year, and I try and break it up a little bit, maybe with a new slide or a different comment or war story. But you know what, everybody? The code is the code is the code, and it doesn't change. And repetition is a wonderful way to learn things and to get familiar with things. So if you heard this before, maybe today something else will stick out. This is indeed an introduction to the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. You are not expected to memorize anything that you hear in this next 45 minutes or so, okay? There is nothing that you will learn that you can't access at a later date, either by looking at the Code of Ethics on our website or by giving us a call to talk about it. Quite frankly, if you leave here today knowing that there is an Ethics Commission, when you might need us and how to get a hold of us, put that in the win column, okay, because I certainly will. And I will be pleased to answer any questions that you might have. I would ask a favor. Try to hold your questions until the end. Jot them down. And I'll tell you why. In my experience, 9 out of 10 times, the question that you're about to ask is the next slide, okay? Other times, it's in there, but it's down the road a little, and if I veer off, it's a little tough to get back, and so I'll tell you what, if you can save your questions, terrific. If you simply can't go on without your question being answered, raise your hand, we'll address it, okay? So with that, let's get started. What you are looking at is from our state constitution. Okay, this is Article 3, Section 7, addressing ethical conduct. Let's read it. The people of the state of Rhode Island believe that public officials and employees must adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct, respect the public trust and the rights of all persons, be open, accountable, and responsive, avoid the appearance of impropriety. We're going to talk more about that. And not use their position for private gain or advantage. Sounds fair to me. I hope it sounds fair to you as well. Before we jump into Rhode Island's Code of Ethics in Government and Regulations, or the Code for short, I wanted to orient us all by talking a little bit about ethical conduct in the general sense, okay? Ethics is a standard or philosophy of right and wrong human behavior based on logical reasoning. So, ethical conduct is the type of behavior that a logical person would agree is just the right thing to do under the circumstances. But here's the thing. People have different ideas about what makes behavior right and wrong, okay? We have ethics based on culture. Ever hear, when in Rome, do as the Romans do? Right? Many people think that whether something is ethical depends on the setting in which it occurs, taking into account the local culture, habits, customs. Hey, this is the way we've always done things around here. That's ethics based on culture. That is not the way the Rhode Island Ethics Commission views ethics, but more on that in a moment. How about ethics based on consequences? where ethical or unethical conduct is determined by looking at the results. And ethical conduct is simply behavior that results in more positives than negatives in both quality and quantity. The end justifies the means. All's well that ends well here. Nope, that's not how we do it either, but I wanted you to be familiar with this. How about ethics based on character, where ethical conduct is determined by asking, what would a virtuous person do under these circumstances? The focus there is on one's character, one's motives. I'm a decent person. How could I possibly violate something called the code of ethics? Okay? We don't even view your behavior based on your character. So let's get right to it. What do we look for at the Ethics Commission? We are asking you to focus on your action. Forget the result. Okay, focus on your action, because the Code of Ethics tells us what actions to avoid without regard to culture, without regard to consequence, even without regard to character. Okay, before we get into the code, I wanted to let you know a little bit about the makeup of the Ethics Commission, the people that I work for, the people that I appear before. Okay, there are 9 members on the Ethics Commission. They are all appointed by the governor. The governor selects 4 members of his or her own choosing, and also selects the other 5 members, but does so from lists of 3 to 5 names that have been submitted by leaders from both the House and the Senate. Right now, we have 7 on the Ethics Commission. We anxiously await the appointment of 2 more. It's always best to have a full complement. And they're a makeup of wonderfully interesting, intelligent, articulate, and compassionate people from different walks of life. There are a couple of lawyers, as you might expect. There is a professor from CCRI. There's a business person. We had a Catholic nun on the Ethics Commission for years who just retired. There have been physicians in the past, business people. It's a great group. Take a look at how powerful the Rhode Island Ethics Commission is. Advisory, investigative, adjudicative, and in some instances, removal powers. Okay, I've been there since September of 2018, and I have not seen the Ethics Commission remove anyone from office. I'm told that if someone's in enough hot water with the Ethics Commission, chances are they're going to step down before someone has to pull them down. While serving on the Ethics Commission, its members are prohibited from holding or campaigning for public office. They may not hold office in any political party or on any political committee, nor may they participate or contribute to a political campaign. Not so much as a sign on the front lawn during election time of an ethics commissioner, okay? I am a member of the staff of the Ethics Commission, and our executive director and chief prosecutor is a gentleman named Jason Grammett. Anybody know Jason? I'm not surprised. Before becoming the director, executive director and chief prosecutor in April of 2018, Jason had my job for, I believe, 20 years. The guy knows ethics, okay? And Jason and I are 2 of 5 attorneys that work for the Ethics Commission. We have 3 investigators, all of whom are former police officers and know their way around an investigation. Michelle Berg is our financial disclosure officer. There's a name you might want to remember. If you have a question about financial disclosure that Michelle can't answer, no one can answer it. There are 12 of us in all, and we hang out at 40 Fountain Street in Providence, and you will leave here with our contact information. Who's subject to this code of ethics besides all of us in this room? Okay, you can see that all state and municipal elected officials are subject to the code. All state and municipal appointed officials are subject to the code, and employees of state and local government and people on public boards, commissions, and agencies. That's a lot of people, all subject to the code of ethics. Conflicts of interest. I like to start with this one. We're going to talk about a number of things today, but basically conflicts of interest and nepotism, pretty much the bread and butter of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. We will talk about other matters as well, but I like to jump right in with conflicts of interest since it's such a big piece of the program. A person subject to the code of ethics, that's you, that's me, may not participate in any matter if it is reasonably foreseeable. What do I mean by that? More than conceivable, less than certain, that's reasonably foreseeable, big window, right? If it is reasonably foreseeable that he, she, or they, or any family member, or any business associate, or any business by which he, she, or they are employed or represents will derive a direct monetary gain or even suffer a direct monetary loss by reason of their official activity. Now, some people might say, well, if I take part in this, it might affect me, it might impact me, but I'm going to lose money, so that shouldn't be a problem, right? It still is, right? The Code of Ethics makes no distinction between financial gain and financial loss. The concern is financial impact. So you can't take an official action that's going to financially impact, for better or worse, yourself, someone in your family, your business associate, or your private employer. Okay, we're going to talk more about this. The code talks a lot about our business associates, so I'd like you to have a working knowledge of who your business associates are as far as the Rhode Island Code of Ethics is concerned. By definition, business associates are persons or entities with whom you are joined to achieve a common financial objective. Not the best definition I've ever seen, so let's look at some examples to understand it better. Your business partners are your business associates. Those are the fairly obvious ones, okay? People you have hired are your business associates. Think attorney, accountant, realtor, contractor. You get the idea. The Ethics Commission has determined that the landlord-tenant relationship is one of business associates. And this next one's important and often forgotten by people. God bless. Any businesses or organizations, that includes not-for-profits, okay? If you are an officer or serve on the board of directors, and that's regardless of whether you get paid to do so, you are a business associate not only of that organization, but of the other leaders in that organization, okay? Ongoing business associations. Your business associations don't necessarily remain ongoing forever. So I want you to have an idea of what the Ethics Commission is going to look at to try and determine whether you have a business associate relationship with someone. They're going to ask generally 3 questions. Are the parties conducting ongoing business transactions? Are there outstanding accounts between the parties? Does one owe the other money, even if the job between them is finished? Is there an anticipated future relationship between the parties? You don't need all 3, okay? Any one of those will trigger the existence of a business associate relationship. A couple of minutes ago, I used your realtor as an example. If you sold your house in 2015 and you used a realtor and hopefully got well over asking price, you had the closing, the funds have been distributed, you've been living happily ever after in your new home for 8 years with no plans to use that or any other realtor again. If that realtor comes before you in your capacity as a member of a school committee, barring some other relationship, like she's not your sister-in-law or something like that, probably not your business associate anymore, and it's probably not a problem, okay? But if your house is for sale now and you're using a realtor, let's say you've even accepted an offer and you're waiting for the closing, and that realtor comes before you in your public capacity, stop. You have to recuse because that's a conflict of interest, okay? Family members. The code also talks about our family members in a number of statutes and regulations. So I'd like you to know who the code considers our family members, right? Whether by blood, marriage, or aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, and first cousins. Those are your family members. Someone might say to me, Lynn, I haven't spoken with my sister in, 4 years. If she comes before me as a member of the school committee, I would no more go out of my way to help her than I would to hurt her. I'll treat her like I would anybody else. No conflict, no need to recuse. Correct? Wrong. Thank you. As sad as a situation as I just painted, a family member is a family member is a family member regardless of the status of your relationship at any given time. Same person might say to me, Lynn, I'm a lot closer to my best friend than I am to my sister. If my best friend comes before me on the school committee, do I need to recuse? How many say yes, I do? How many say no, I do not? Okay, so here's the thing about best friends. Technically, under the code, you do not need to recuse if the relationship is a friendship. Can you imagine the task before the Ethics Commission of trying to weigh the value of somebody's friendship? I mean, what are they going to say? Oh, did you meet in kindergarten? Did you date in high school? Do you take each other's kids back and forth to rehearsals or practices? Do you text 2 times a year, 2 times an hour? It would be crazy. But remember that constitutionally founded goal of avoiding even the appearance of impropriety? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. If your best friend comes before you in your public capacity, what an excellent opportunity for you to exercise the good judgment to just recuse. Okay, sermon over for now. Think of a conflict of interest as a situation where a person's public duties and private life intersect. Now, I said no test at the end. You don't have to memorize anything. That's still the case. But if you leave here today with something on your mind from this presentation, make it this, okay? It's not unethical to have a conflict of interest. It doesn't violate the code of ethics to have a conflict of interest, said the woman with 31 first cousins, okay? It's not the conflict that's the problem. The potential problem is the failure to identify and manage your conflict. We help people do that all the time, okay? Do I have a conflict of interest? Here's what you're going to ask yourself. Is it reasonably foreseeable, more than conceivable, less than certain, that a decision that I'm helping to make as part of my public duties will result in a financial benefit or detriment to me, to somebody in my family or household, to my business associate, or to a business by which I'm employed? Ask yourself, even if there's no financial impact, is a family member, a household member, a business associate, or a business by which I'm employed a party to, or taking part in the matter that's being discussed? If the answer is yes, you have a conflict of interest, okay? And you must recuse from participation in that matter. You might notice in this slide and in the last slide, the term household member appears. Under the nepotism provisions of the code, which we're going to cover in just a moment, if someone lives in your home, that is conflict of interest territory, regardless of whether you are related by blood marriage or adoption. So the act of recusal is relatively simple. You are asked to complete what's called a statement of conflict of interest form, sometimes called a recusal form. They're on our website, but chances are very strong that the clerk in your municipality has plenty of these. You fill it out, you present the original to your presiding officer, appointing authority, director, supervisor, someone, and between you, you figure out who's going to send us a copy, because we want a copy of the recusal forms, so that when someone calls the Ethics Commission to say, well, so-and-so had a conflict and didn't recuse, get right on that, investigating it, I'm going to file a complaint, we can just look in our book and say, no, that person recused, we have a copy of the form, okay? On to nepotism, and my new favorite slide. And if nepotism exists, my brothers will root it out. I like that one. Okay, you may not participate in any matter as part of your public duties if there is reason to believe or expect that any person within your family or a household member is a party or participant, will derive a direct monetary gain, will suffer a direct monetary loss, or somehow obtain an employment advantage by virtue of your participation. Now, the code's prohibitions against nepotism apply regardless. Your family or household member may absolutely objectively be the most qualified person for that position, absolutely deserve a promotion. If it's going to happen without your taking part, okay? The policy underlying the prohibitions against nepotism recognizes it's just really hard to be truly objective when making a decision that's going to impact a family or household member. Do we think you can do it? Quite possibly. Totally not the point. We remove from you the obligation of having to defend your actions if you take part in something that's going to impact your family member by just taking it off the table. Don't do it. Step back. Let other people do that. Now, again, don't forget that constitutionally inspired goal of avoiding even the appearance of impropriety. So, some examples of nepotism, not an exhaustive list, but this will get you thinking about it. Hiring someone in your family or household is nepotism, okay? The awarding of a contract to someone in your family or household is nepotism, as is any decision regarding a family or household member's property, the appointment to a compensated position, or the participation in a disciplinary matter in which a family or household member's employment is at risk. These are some examples. You may not participate in the supervision, evaluation, appointment, classification, promotion, transfer, or discipline of anybody in your family or your household. And you can't delegate any of those tasks to someone who answers to you. Because if you can't do it, why can your assistant do it or someone who answers to you do it? It's as though you've done it yourself, okay? Some people will say, okay, if I recuse, what do? Do I stay in the room? Do I leave the room? First of all, let's talk about this. When you recuse from participation, you don't just recuse from voting. You recuse from any conversations, discussions leading up to that voting as well. If you just didn't vote, you'd be abstaining. We require you to recuse from any and all part of it, okay? Once you recuse, a recusal does not mean that a public official must leave the room if it's an open meeting. But I'll tell you what, do yourself a favor, after you recuse, even during an open meeting, get out of the room. Come back when the matter is done. All right? You don't have to, but it is best practice. And you go sit in the back row. Let's say you get a text, and you're answering the text. Yes, I will bring milk home. At the same time, somebody at the table is getting a text and answers the text. I don't know what time Seinfeld's on. Someone is going to call the Ethics Commission the next day and say, you know, somebody recused, they went to the back row, the first thing they did was text the other person at the table, and I know that they were communicating. So just, who needs that, right? Who needs that headache? So now let's talk about executive session, private closed session. If you recuse from executive session, you have to get out of the room. No more right to be in there as any member of the public, okay? That's the scoop on recusal. Contracts. Ever so briefly on contracts. No person subject to the code of ethics, that's you, that's me, shall enter into any contract with a state or municipal agency unless the contract has been awarded through an open and public process, including prior public notice and subsequent public disclosure of all the proposals considered and the contracts awarded. Now, there are some, well, I didn't put the exceptions. There are certain jobs that customarily don't require putting a bid out. Attorneys, physicians, engineers, things of that nature. But they still require public notice, okay, and public disclosure of the proposals considered and contracts awarded. So, shorthanding all this, if you work for a municipality or an elected official in a municipality, and let's say that you plow snow in the winter as a little side hustle, and you know that the town could benefit from your services, you can't just go up to whomever does the hiring and say, hey, I have a plow, and I'm not busy on whatever days, call me if you need help. You can't do that, okay? You could respond to what I just went through, that whole rigmarole. It's got to be put out there to bid. Okay, there's a lot of topics here. We're going to jump into a new one. And again, let this stuff just kind of hit you as it does. Don't be writing and trying to take everything down like I used to do in classes, and then I would miss half of it. Let it just kind of fall over you, because some of it's going to sink in a few minutes, some of it's going to sink in a couple of weeks, and some of it might never sink in, but that's why we're here if you need us, if you want to call. A number of us have secondary jobs in addition to our public positions. You may have a private or public sector job in addition to your state or municipal position. However, you may not accept outside employment that does either or both of the following. Your second job cannot impair your independence of judgment with respect to your public duties, nor may it require or induce you to disclose confidential information that you acquire during the course of and by reason of your public duties. There are a number of people that seek advisory opinions from the Ethics Commission, and we will cover those briefly. You'll leave here knowing all about advisory opinions. And they want to know if they can take a second job. Usually this might be someone that is a state employee or a municipal employee that just wants to pick up something on the night, at night or on weekends. So I want you to know what the Ethics Commission is going to look at to try and decide if that second job is okay. All right? They're going to look at the nexus between that person's public duties and their private employment. All of the work has to be completed outside of normal work hours without the use of public resources. A public official or employee may not appear before their own agency. That'll come up again. And the work has to be conducted outside of areas over which a public official or employee has decision-making jurisdiction. And a public official or employee may not use their public position to solicit business or customers. Okay? Alrighty. This should come as no surprise to anyone, I hope. You may not use or disclose for financial gain confidential information acquired in the course of your official duties. And when I talk about financial gain, I don't just mean for yourself, for someone in your family, for your business associate, or for your private employer. Keep confidential information just that, okay? Confidential. It's that way for a reason. All right, gifts. You may not accept cash or forgiveness of debt from interested persons. What are interested persons? An interested person has a direct financial interest in a decision that you either make or you help to make, okay? And interested persons can include employees or representatives of an individual business, organization, or entity. What can you do? You may accept things of value up to and including $25 per instance and $75 per year per interested person. Now, once upon a time, that $25 was $150, and that $75 was $450. Sounds high? Because usually things don't come down like that. Now, I wasn't around then. I was, probably working somewhere else, but my guess is that maybe that was taken advantage of a little bit, and they had to bring it down. If your municipality has a zero tolerance policy on gifts, not a bad idea, in my humble opinion, then you have to follow that one, your municipality, zero tolerance. Your municipality might say, yeah, we get it, Ethics Commission, you can't go around accepting gifts from interested persons, but $25, what's that, a cup of coffee and a sandwich? We're going to make it $100. No, can't do that. Then you have to follow ours. You follow the less fun one, okay? Think of it that way. And you know what? Steve Cross from our office, he's retired now, but he was an investigator, a former police officer. He used to, when he would train police departments on the code of ethics, he would say to a police officer, anybody ever want to buy a cup of coffee or anything before you were a police officer? So that's kind of what we say as well. Transactions with subordinates. You may not engage in a financial transaction. What do I mean by that? Private employment, consulting, giving or receiving loans, monetary, political, charitable contributions with an employee, contractor, or consultant over whom you exercise supervisory responsibilities. Now, exceptions. Financial transactions in the normal course of a regular commercial business or occupation. You stopping on the way home at a CVS, you see someone that's your subordinate working at one of the registers, you do not need to go to another register to avoid a transaction with that person. That's a normal transaction in the course of a regular commercial business. Another example of an exception would be if the subordinate initiates the financial transaction. And then there are certain charitable events that are sponsored by the highest official or governing body of the state or of the municipality. That would be okay. I feel like I skipped a slide. Perhaps not. Okay. The revolving door. There are a number of revolving door provisions in the Code of Ethics. We're not going to go through all of them, but I definitely want you to understand why we have them. The purpose of the revolving door statutes and regulations is to prevent government employees and public officials from unfairly profiting from or otherwise trading upon the contacts, associations, and special knowledge that they acquired during their tenure as public servants. Okay, let's look at one. No elected or appointed official may accept any appointment or election that requires approval by the body of which he or she is or was a member to any position that carries with it financial benefit. This prohibition continues for 1 year after the termination of his, her, or their membership in or on such body. Okay, now, the Ethics Commission may give its approval for a particular appointment or election if satisfied that denial of such employment or position would create a substantial hardship, not for the person who wants the job, but for the body, board, or municipality. So, let's say that someone is a member of a city council, and that person happens to be an attorney. And the attorney, for whatever reason, leaves the city council, either doesn't get reelected or leaves because business is too much going on. In any event, the attorney leaves the city council. 6 months later, the city council says, we need to hire a new attorney. And somebody says, who better than Jack, who left 6 months ago? He's an attorney. He knows how we do things here. He knows a lot about municipal government. He's the perfect choice. Let's get him. Can he take it? No. He can take it after a year if he wants. Now, we talked about this approval for hardship. Let's say that Jack wants, let's say that the city goes to the Ethics Commission and says, we have looked far and wide throughout the state of Rhode Island and its 12,000 plus attorneys. And the only person for the job is Jack. Not going to happen, okay? But it did happen once in a municipality. It might have been Charlestown a number of years ago. Their clerk left, and I think the clerk had been a hired person or elected person. And the new clerk came on and had to have like a medical procedure. She was going to be out for exactly 3 months and then return. But the town said, we need somebody that's not going to slow down the probate court because the clerk runs that and is not going to slow down procedure. Could we bring that person back for 3 months? And that was a hardship. The Ethics Commission said yes to that one. Here's another one. No municipal elected official or school committee member, whether elected or appointed, okay, while holding office and for a period of 1 year after leaving municipal office, shall seek or accept employment with any municipal agency in the municipality in which the official serves. There's an exception. Employment that was held at the time of your election or appointment and maintained throughout. Okay? Alrighty. You may not represent yourself or anyone else before the agency of which you are a member or by which you are employed, or before any other agency for which your agency is the appointing authority. You may not serve as an expert witness before your own agency, and these prohibitions continue for 1 year after you leave your public office or employment. What do we mean by representation? Representation means the participation in the presentation of evidence or arguments before that agency for purpose of influencing the judgment of that agency in your favor or in favor of someone else. You can't go before your own agency. Exceptions. To get one of these hardship exceptions, you must request an advisory opinion. Here's an example. Let's say that someone sits on a zoning board in their municipality, and that person wants to put a shed in their backyard to put, you know, the bicycles, the grill, the patio furniture in the wintertime. And they go out and they buy the shed, and they're in the backyard, They want to figuring out where they're going to put it up, and they say, oh, there's a setback requirement that I can't meet. I need a variance that will allow me to put this shed in my backyard. I need to go before the zoning board to get one of those variances, and I'm on the zoning board. Hey, Ethics Commission, can I get one of those hardship exceptions? Chances are strong, as has happened at least 3 times in the past 4 years of people wanting to put sheds in their backyards that are on zoning boards. The Ethics Commission will say, yes, we'll give you a hardship exception to go before the zoning board to get to ask for a variance so you can put a shed in your backyard so you can keep your personal items, safe and dry during the winter. So the same person, let's say a year later, buys a piece of property in town with a buddy, and they say, we are going to develop this property commercially. We're going to develop it. We're going to put on a commercial building and rent it out. We're going to make so much money, it's going to be crazy. I got to go back to the Ethics Commission, get one of those hardship exceptions so I can go before the zoning board. Like I did with the shed. I love it. Nice try. Whoever said nice try, good for you. No way. There is a big difference between wanting to put a shed in your own backyard to protect your kids' bikes and wanting to engage in a new commercial venture and go before your own board. Excellent. Complaints. We're not going to go too deeply into them, but we do get them at the Ethics Commission, and newsflash, they are never filed by one's friends. I can tell you that. Now this is a rather recent change to the code. There's a moratorium on complaints being accepted by the Ethics Commission 90 days before an election. Because once upon a time, if you can imagine, people used to file complaints against candidates to maybe try and get a leg up in the election. If the complaint's good when you want to, hurl it, it'll be good after the election as well. Okay, here's what I'd like you to know about complaints. Anybody can file a complaint against someone subject to the Code of Ethics. You have to do it on a form provided by the Ethics Commission. All right? It's got to be signed under oath. You know what that means? No anonymous complaints. And it has to name the individual alleged to have violated the code. We call that person the respondent. Please identify the respondent's public office. Detail the specific acts which allegedly violated the code. A complaint is not public unless and until it's accepted by Jason Grammett, our executive director, okay? And the complainant is not a party, all right? The complainant may get the ball rolling, but it's the state of Rhode Island in re the respondent. What I'd like you to know about complaints also is even though we prosecute them and they violate the law, complaints filed with the Ethics Commission are civil in nature. They are not criminal in nature. The Ethics Commission does not put people in prison. That is not to say that someone facing a civil complaint with the Ethics Commission is not in some hot water with the AG or the U.S. Attorney's Office, okay? But for our purposes, it's civil. Advisory opinions. We're getting there. We're almost at the end. Probably the other half of my job, the big part of my job in addition to education, is drafting advisory opinions. Together, my colleague and friend Teodora Papa and I probably draft 95% of the advisory opinions that leave the office. We would like you to know what they are, when you might need one, and how you can get one. Has anyone here ever gotten an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission? Okay, so a few of you know the route. An advisory opinion is a legal interpretation of the Code of Ethics. It's issued by the Ethics Commission. It provides specific guidance about a particular and impending circumstance, and it's based on the representations of the petitioner. 2 things. We don't issue advisory opinions on hypotheticals. First of all, they have no value because there are no facts to attach to it, okay? It has to be an actual impending circumstance. And when I say they're based on the representations of the petitioner being the person asking for the advisory opinion, that means that if you send in your letter and you describe the facts, and Teddy or myself or whoever's writing it gives you a call and says, I just have a few follow-up questions, and I take my notes and you tell me the facts, I'm not going to hang up the phone and tap an investigator on the shoulder and say, hey, go check this out. They tell me this. They tell me that. No. The advisory opinion is based on whatever you tell me is taken as the truth. And the only way you're going to be in trouble down the line is if you rely on advisory opinion that was based on something that wasn't truthful. Hasn't happened since I've been here. So, anybody subject to the code can ask for an advisory opinion about a provision which may affect them, right? The time to do it is before you take official action. Okay, better an advisory opinion today than a complaint tomorrow. Also, the Ethics Commission does not issue advisory opinions on past conduct, prospective conduct only. Now, someone might say, well, I just got the agenda, and I'm not sure I can take part in the meetings in 3 days. What do I do? Couple of choices. You just recuse because you don't have time to get an advisory opinion, or it doesn't really matter. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, of course, but you don't have to. You won't have a quorum issue or something. Or you request an advisory opinion, and the matter gets tabled until you can get your advisory opinion. And we'll do our best to try and get it at the next meeting, okay? So, how do you get one of these advisory opinions? Mail, hand deliver, or email to us a letter. It's got to have your signature. And please include the following information. We have to know your name, phone number, and email address. The name, jurisdiction, and powers of your agency, your official position, tell us a little about your duties, the nature of the potential conflict. Summarize the relevant facts as best you can. Right? Someone's going to call you and we'll ask if we need more information. If we call and ask you questions, please, it's never to embarrass or offend or be nosy. We know the facts that we need to collect in order to figure out what part of the code we're going to be looking at and what former advisory opinions we're going to be looking at to try and use to figure out yours. Let us know if you have any time constraints. Again, we try and issue the advisory opinions in the order in which the requests are received, but sometimes somebody's in more of a hurry than somebody else. And the Ethics Commission only meets twice a month, sometimes once a month in the summer, always on a Tuesday morning, always at 9. So if we know that you're in a rush, we'll do our best to accommodate you. After you send in your request, you'll get a letter saying we got it. You're going to get a draft recommendation prepared by a staff attorney. It will say draft across every page. You know why? Because doesn't mean a thing unless and until it's approved by at least 5 members of the Ethics Commission. And you need 5 members to approve it, regardless of how many are sitting. It's not just a majority, okay? They might have questions for you. And if you're not there to answer them, they might have to kick it over to a date that you can be there. Have I seen advisory opinions go through without the petitioner there? Sure. But it's a great way for you to view the process at work and to answer any questions. You might have questions for them that you want to ask. Okay, so let's say that your advisory opinion is approved. You're going to get a written copy. It's going to go on our website. Both the advisory opinion and the request seeking it are public records. So someone could call the office and say, I'd like a copy of the advisory opinion issued to so-and-so and the letter that they sent in requesting it, and we would have to do that. Okay? Now, these are all on our website. You might say, I don't know if I need an advisory opinion. Let me look at the Ethics Commission website and see if they've ever had this question before. So you go and you put a couple of terms in the search bar and up pop 5, 6, 11 advisory opinions. And you start to read them. And you say, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. And then you get to one and you say, that's my question. Like, that's my exact question. Change the name, the date. That's my question. I don't need an advisory opinion. I'm going to read this one, and I'm going to do exactly what they told this person to do. And I see a couple people shaking their heads who have gotten advisory opinions. Please don't do that, okay? The only person who can rely with certainty on an advisory opinion is the person to whom it was issued. Do read it. Get an idea of which way the wind might be blowing when yours goes before the Ethics Commission. You may even see us cite it in your advisory opinion. But if you really need an advisory opinion on which you can rely with certainty, it has to be issued to you. Okay, this is it. Annual financial disclosure. We're not going to go too deep. We have a few slides on this. So you can see who's required to file. You're required to file, and that's all you care about, right? So we don't have to go through all of them. I want you to know the purpose behind financial disclosure. I promise it is not intended to make your life miserable, to harass you, to pry into your private info. Annual financial disclosure statements help ensure that people acting in the public interest do not use their public positions to further their private financial interests. These things help identify conflicts between an official's financial interests in his or her public office. They increase the overall transparency in government appointments and decision-making, and they help further the public's confidence in government. And what's wrong with that, if you think about it, right? So, a little bit about the financial statements. The yearly financial statement requires the listing of certain assets and sources of income, but does not require divulging net worth. No one's going to ask you what you paid for your house. No one's going to ask you how much money you have in the bank, okay? Information that is required includes the following: the name of your employer, real estate other than your principal place of residence, any business in which you, your spouse, or dependent children have at least a 10% or $5,000 ownership or investment interest. There are questions related to trust income and out-of-state travel provided by or paid for by someone else. And you will be asked to list all positions of management, as well as positions of director, officer, partner, trustee, positions of a similar nature in any entity held by you, your spouse, your dependent child, regardless of whether you are paid for such service. And this includes businesses as well as nonprofit groups, even if you don't get any money for doing this. We have to identify those. It hails back to that business associate relationship. If you are the director on the board of directors or a leader in a private organization, even a not-for-profit, that there's a relationship between you and that organization, okay? You must disclose debts of more than $1,000 to anyone other than most family members, to financial institutions where the debt is secured by a mortgage on your principal residence, and other than debt arising from credit card transactions. Let me see if there's anything else on financial disclosure. You have to answer every question, and we like you to file online. If someone wants a paper form, we'll get it to you. But, and if you need help filling out the form, give us a call. I've heard people sit and help people fill it out over the phone. It also comes with instructions. Make sure you have the instructions with you when you fill it out. This is our contact information. Feel free to call us anytime. And somewhere between, getting a full-blown advisory opinion and doing nothing about a situation, just call us. Sometimes just talking it through is helpful. And I will take a moment to plug, because if you just can't get enough of ethics, and who can, as of September of 2021, there is now a pre-recorded training for ethics available online. It's 7 modules that are like 6 or 7 minutes apiece. It's all this information. The voice will sound familiar because I created it and recorded it, but you can take it on your own time, at your leisure. And I threw in like 3 multiple choice questions after each module. You don't have to pass them. You don't even have to take them. But sometimes if you do, you can get a sense of whether or not you are understanding what's going on. So you have been delightfully attentive. I'm just going to check the time here. Yes?
I just have a question. You mentioned that travel, the out-of-state travel,
Yes.
paid for by others, including business, like work travel paid by your employer. Is that disclosed in the financial report?
I think if it's part of your job and your employer is sending you to do your job, I don't think it's included in that. Look at the instructions. It should be on them. And if they're not, you can call us. But yes?
What's the delineation between your rights as a parent and your rights as a school committee member? So you're a parent out getting grants for a particular after-school activity that your child participates in. Are you recusing when that comes to the school committee to accept that gift? Can you, as a parent, bring that to your school committee? So, write you?
So a lot of parents are on school committees. If the school committee has a grant to give out, you are not the person to go before the school committee to ask for that grant. Okay? I know how much is involved in public service, and I commend anyone that goes into it. And in the past couple of years, school committee members, I can see halos all over the place because you're absolute angels. This isn't easy. But, and I hate to say it depends, but say it with me, it depends. There is something called, so you can't appear before your own agency, but there is a public forum exception that allows people to speak as individuals before an agency, right? But there are restrictions. It has to be a matter of general public interest that may impact you or your family member, and everybody else has to be able to get up and speak as well. It's not like, make way for Mary, she's got something to say, everybody else sit down. If you have a question about appearing before your own agency, either call us to talk about it or ask for a hardship exception. I know it gets blurry, because, yes?
So, a question, I know over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of really frivolous ACRA requests and ethics complaints, and I'm curious as to what percentage, and I don't expect you to have this off the top of your head, but what percentage of ethics complaints in the last couple of years are found to be completely frivolous? Because what happens, and a lot of people don't realize this, but as these things happen, the resources that have to be devoted to them at the municipal level, within the school department, at the municipal level, and at the state level, the taxpayers are all paying for that. So what's the stopgap there? When do we change something to make things make a little bit more sense?
Right. So there is a section of the code that says, no person shall knowingly and willfully make a false or frivolous complaint under this chapter. And when a complaint comes in, Jason Grammett has to evaluate it. And the bar is low for a complaint to be accepted. The question asked is, if this is true, will it violate the code? If the answer is yes, the complaint gets accepted. But then it goes through other procedures and could get kicked out. I don't know that just because a complaint isn't accepted does not mean it's frivolous. So that's a case-by-case basis. And as for numbers, I'm not sure. There are a number of complaints that don't get accepted, and some that do. But I sense your concern, and that's why I mentioned the moratorium. Yes, Mr. Bryan. Yes.
Following up on what my colleague over here asked, these complaints are required to be signed under oath.
Yes.
To your knowledge, has there ever been a referral for a complaint that was determined to be untrue or actually false or maliciously false?
Not in my tenure, and I've just been there 4.5 years.
And I'm not criticizing this, the enforcement mechanism on this really, it exists in theory, but in practice it just doesn't really happen.
A frivolous complaint, you mean? You know what I have to ask, and I'm not to you, back at the ranch, is has that ever happened with a false or frivolous complaint? And if so, how does that come up? Does the person against who the complaint was filed say to the Ethics Commission, this was false and frivolous, and I want to file a complaint against someone for filing a false and frivolous complaint? I think that might be the way that it happens. I don't know if the Ethics Commission on its own would declare something to have been false and frivolous, but if it gets through that first step, it's kind of a catch-22, because if it gets through this first step, then it's at least made it past the threshold. And if it doesn't, regardless of whether it was false or frivolous, it doesn't even merit being a complaint. So these are not questions that I've had before, but you've given me something to go back to. my, we're out of time. Too bad. No, kidding.
Thanks, Lynn.